You're listening to Safer Travel Talk, the podcast to inform, inspire, and provide insight into the world of travel. In this episode of the podcast, we're excited to be joined by Pronunciation with Emma to discuss her experiences living abroad in Spain, how integrating into the Spanish culture and learning Spanish helped her transition and eventually start her own business.
So hi Emma, nice to see you, lovely to see you. Today we're going to do a bit of a podcast with you talking about when your adventure started after or during university and you decided to move to Spain, and then how it's changed your life and what happened then and how we've got to where we are today. So really excited to talk to you and really looking forward to this podcast.
Thank you for inviting me on.
It's a pleasure.
So maybe it's best if I introduce myself, then people know who I am. So my name is Emma. I went to York St. John University nearly 10 years ago. It feels like just yesterday I graduated, but no, it's been like quite a while now, 8 years, I think. And as you said, I was doing linguistics. I don't know if the degrees and stuff have changed now, because I know they're always changing degrees and stuff at York St. John. But I was studying English language and linguistics at the time. And then in the second year of my degree, I decided to go abroad, which is really not what I planned to do. I was the most monolingual person. I'd never even left the UK. It was, I genuinely believe that I was never really going to leave the UK. I was never bothered about traveling or anything like that. So much so that when it came to picking one of the optional language modules, I thought about choosing, or I should say I did choose, the British Sign Language module. So I thought that would be the most useful because I'm going to be staying in the UK. I'm not bothered about traveling. I've never traveled. My family could never take me abroad and stuff like that. We always, I think the furthest we went was like Skegness for our holidays as a kid. That was my mentality back then. And as well, I had this almost like a hatred for languages because I had such a bad experience in secondary school. And I think a lot of people who don't like languages, it tends to stem from like a secondary school teacher who was really horrible and strict and just killed their love for languages. So, that was me. I was very quiet and very shy. Wasn't interested in going abroad. I chose to do British Sign Language as a module in my first year. And then I don't know what it was actually that kind of made me go abroad. I remember I was choosing between Canada and Spain. And Canada looked amazing. I mean, when you get the offer to go to Canada, you'd be like, yeah, I'm going. But then I was looking at Spain, and one of the modules that they did was called the SMILE program. I can't remember what it stands for, what it means or anything like that. But basically you kind of work for free, like volunteer in a Catalan secondary school. And you basically get thrown in a classroom with a load of teenagers with a teacher. Of course, you're not just completely alone. And I was with 3 different teachers. And I still remember, like, a few of them kind of let me take a back seat and kind of just used me as the model. Like, okay, Emma, how do you say this word? And listen to the native class. Like, that's kind of how they did that. But there was one teacher who kind of just said, right, I'm going to mark some essays for this hour. Like, you go ahead and teach. So she would let me plan things, which was really nice. It gave me a little bit of freedom, some room for creativity. But I still remember on my first day, I was like sweating, I was like shaking and sweating. I was so nervous. And now I'm still an English teacher, so I must have enjoyed it. As torturous as that first experience was, but I really enjoyed it. And funnily enough, I really liked working with the teenagers there. I don't know whether they just happened to put me in good classes where all the teenagers were well behaved, but I really enjoyed the experience. But the thing is that I ended up getting into that in a very lazy way. You know, it's kind of accidental how I got into that, because again, I was a bit of a lazy student. I shouldn't say that, but I mean, it's all paid off. It's got me to where I am today. So sometimes a bit of laziness helps. I remember looking at the modules for Spain and Canada, you know, as I said, and I was kind of weighing up which one would be the best. And as I said, there was this teaching program at the time. And I remember asking the coordinator, like, is this like an extra thing? So would I need to do, you know, exams and things like that and this or something extra? And she said, no, it's a module. So you don't have to do any exams or write any essays. And I thought, oh, great. Put me down for the highest number of credits for that one. So yeah, it was not like the best reason for choosing that, but I ended up really enjoying it and staying longer in Spain because of that. Like I really enjoyed all of that. So yeah, that's what gave me that little travel bug.
So you were quite young to go, really, and to go by yourself. I know you had the comfort of the school and, you know, that kind of security, I suppose, that you were going through the university as well. But what were the things that kind of shocked you the most, or what were the things that, you know, you didn't expect that actually happened during your first few months or your time in Spain?
So before I went, because I'd never been abroad before, I did a lot of research, but this was, you know, 7, 8, 9 years ago. Let's just say nearly 10 years ago, so I don't remember. I'm feeling older when I say that. You know, this was a while ago, and I remember, you know, watching YouTube videos of like vloggers, reading blogs by travel bloggers and stuff like that. And I never really had Instagram and stuff like that, so I couldn't follow these Instagram travel people, whatever they call themselves now. Influencers, I think, is the correct term for them. So I remember just looking at these videos, and they were talking mostly about the food and the culture, and I was expecting something like that. Like I was expecting like, oh, the food will be different. Oh, the food looks really good. And people are saying how wonderful it is, etc. So I was preparing myself for like little cultural things. And I was also preparing myself to learn some Spanish because I thought it would be a good way to get around. I used it as a survival tool, basically. I wasn't learning Spanish for fun, which is really weird because now I learn a new language every year for fun, which some people may find really weird.
Is that fun?
Yeah. Well, I come from a linguistic background, so what I find fun may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I like now I'm learning Japanese, which is probably like one of the most different languages, you know, from English. Yeah. But I probably find it the most fun because it's so different. It's such a challenge, and my brain, especially in lockdown and quarantine, you get a little bit bored, and doing something like Japanese helps that. But anyway, so yeah, I started learning some Spanish just for survival. And I can still remember the coordinator at the time as well. She told me, like, don't worry about learning Spanish. Everyone speaks English in Tarragona, which is where I studied. Got there, no one spoke English. So that was a huge shock because everyone told me, don't worry, in Spain, everyone speaks English. And, you know, friends of mine or family members or whoever who had been to Barcelona or Madrid or Benidorm or Magaluf or wherever, they said, don't worry, everyone speaks English there. But of course, everyone's going to speak English in Benidorm and Magaluf because of the tourists. And yeah. And Barcelona and Madrid are huge cities, so of course people are going to speak English. So I prepared myself for the cultural side. I prepared myself a little bit for the language side. But I was like, it was a complete shock from day one. I remember arriving at Reus Airport, and you know, I was with my suitcases. It was in the middle of a heat wave, so it was like 45 degrees. Never experienced that heat before. Got outside the airport, this heat, never felt anything like it in my life. And this woman was standing near the taxi rank, and she came up to us with a clipboard or something like that. I don't know what the clipboard was for, but she came up to us And she just said, hola, da 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 da. And I was like, what? Yeah. Anyways, at that moment, I realized, oh my God, I'm in a different country. I'm not in England anymore. So the things that I didn't anticipate would shock me were things like the language. So simple things like walking down the street and not hearing English. Like you would walk down the street and just hear these clusters of sounds. Like, you know, it was a little bit intimidating, a little bit scary, and little tasks as well. This is something I never even thought about, is little tasks that you do every day or every week or whatever become so much harder. So going to the supermarket and asking, excuse me, where's the bread? I couldn't do that. Even if I had the words to do it, I felt too shy and too nervous to do it. I would literally be kind of walking around the supermarket thinking, I really hope I find everything I need because I don't know how to ask for fish, you know. I was really, really scared. Even going to pay, I remember there were times where my anxiety would really get the better of me and I would be like shaking, putting things on the conveyor belt, and you know, the poor woman would look at me like, what's wrong with this English girl? Other things as well I didn't anticipate, but I find very normal now, were things like the staring. So in Spain, they stare a lot as well. In England, we don't do that. You know, if you stared at someone, people would think, oh, what's wrong with them? But in Spain, they stare a lot. And I sometimes catch my boyfriend, who's also Spanish. I brought him back with me after my Erasmus trip. I sometimes catch him staring a little bit. You know, the Spanish slips back in and he starts staring at people. And I have to say, no, you can't do that here. Like, we're in England. People will probably beat you up if you stare at them too long. So I never anticipated that. And with the combination of, you know, the staring and not knowing what people are saying, you become a little bit paranoid, like, people are talking about me and what are they saying about me? I don't understand. But now I kind of use that to my advantage as almost like a game, because people look at me and they think, she won't speak any English. And I can listen to them and hear all the horrible things they have to say about me. I'm joking. But I listen to some things that they say about me and it's quite funny, because they think I don't understand. And that happens a lot in England. You know, right now I live in Bristol and there are a lot of Spanish speakers here. And I do have some funny stories of like sitting in pubs and stuff and a group of, you know, like a Spanish couple sitting next to me, basically saying very horrible things about the English. And I was sitting there listening to the whole thing and kind of chuckling away because I could understand and they thought no one could. So without traveling, I would never have that story to tell. But those are some of the cultural things as well. Like the touching really, really got to me at first, because again, in England, we don't really touch so much unless you're really close friends. You may give a hug, but in Spain, it's like you just meet someone and you go to kiss them on the cheeks, and that was really weird. I didn't know, like, which side do I go? Like, I have accidentally kissed a few people because I've gone to the wrong side and stuff like that. But yeah, as you're talking as well, sometimes you'll find that Spanish people put their hand on you, like on your shoulder or something like that, or on your hands. And there were cases like where I first met my boyfriend's mum, and I just had my hands, you know, on the dining room table. We were chatting or whatever, and then she put her hand on top of mine and she kept it there. And I wasn't even focusing on the conversation the whole time. I was thinking, she's touching my hand. I don't like this. But it's something you get used to. You know, I'm really used to it now. I found that I now touch people like on the shoulder and stuff when I'm talking, and I need to remind myself, like, oh, don't do that. You know, if they're not Spanish. If they're Spanish, it's fine. They're used to it. But yeah.
Did you find all of that, you know, when you first went over, did you find that mentally draining? That kind of, you know, it's just constantly seemed to be, you're out of your comfort zone in this point. You're out of, this is new. This is something, you know, did you find that took its toll on you mentally as well as kind of, you know, raising your anxiety or making you feel uncomfortable?
Oh yeah, like the first semester that I spent in Spain, because originally I was supposed to only be in Spain for one semester, and then the coordinator messed up and put 1 year instead of one term, one semester. So yeah, I was there for a year, but in the first semester, I hated it. Like I hated, why are people touching me? And when I tried the food, I thought, oh, it's all these amazing pictures, but here the food's really oily compared to back home because we cook with a lot of butter, while in Spain they they still cook with a lot of oil, and I wasn't used to that. And yeah, other things as well, like catcalling. I hadn't experienced much of that in the UK. Hadn't experienced that at all in the UK, actually. I was lucky enough to not experience that in the UK. But in Spain, I experienced that a lot. And even times when I was with my boyfriend, I still remember I was walking down the street in the middle of Barcelona with my boyfriend next to me, chatting away. And, two guys, one of them was working, he was working at a restaurant. He was standing outside with the menu, getting people to come inside, and he was catcalling me and shouting things at me. Of course, my boyfriend wasn't happy about that, and he turned around and said something that I don't remember what it was, but it probably wasn't very nice. So it's those kind of things that made me feel really, really, really uncomfortable. And I really hated Spain when I first went because of those little things, I just wanted to go to the supermarket and not feel anxious. I just wanted to look at the currency and know exactly what I'm paying with. I just wanted to not be in 30-degree heat anymore. I just wanted to be able to speak to my landlord and report a problem, because there were many, and not to have to use Google Translator at the same time. Little things like that you just completely take for granted that you can do in your first language in your own country.
Of course.
It's just made so much harder when you go abroad. So yeah, I hated the first semester.
How did you deal with that? How did you, because obviously now, I mean, at the end of, you loved it by the end of your 12 months there. I mean, how did you get over that initial kind of, I'm not happy, I'm out of my comfort zone, it's mentally draining. How did you deal with that?
Okay, so in one word, integrating. That's all I did. So in the first semester, I was hanging around mostly with the Erasmus students. For people who don't know what Erasmus is, basically when you go study abroad as part of your degree for a semester, which I was supposed to do, or a year, which I ended up doing. So I was hanging around with a lot of the other exchange students, the Erasmus students, and they were just always wanting to go out and party and drink and do typical Erasmus stuff, I guess. Like that's what everyone does on Erasmus, is they just party. But I got bored of that very quickly. Like Tarragona is very small, and there were maybe like 2 or 3 clubs that you could go to. So they were just going to the same ones all the time, and I got really bored. And yeah, no offense to the group or anything like that, but they just kind of weren't my people. Like I didn't really click with them. We didn't have much in common, and I found it really hard to make like decent friends when I was there. So that didn't help. That made me feel even lonelier, more isolated. Like I feel like I'm not supposed to be here. Maybe I should have gone to Canada, it would have been better maybe. But I went home at Christmas, and I remember saying to my dad, I really don't want to go back. I really, really don't. Like, I really hate it there. I've got no friends. Everyone just wants to party, and I don't want to do that. I want to do something else, da-da-da. And my dad said, look, Emma, you've got 1 more semester left there. Just go, get the teaching experience from the school, improve your Spanish, go to your classes or whatever, put it on your CV, and then get the first flight home that you can, when your semester's over. So that was the plan. Go back, do those extra few months, and then come back and forget all about it. Never, ever, ever return to Spain again. And I ended up making some Catalan friends while I was there. So I just started integrating more. I started taking Spanish more seriously so I could communicate with people. That then helped with my anxiety. Going to, the local bakery, I ended up kind of talking to the woman who owned it, and I wouldn't say becoming friends with her, but becoming more friendly with her. She would ask how my studies were going.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And she was so patient with me, because I bet in this small town, she got so many tourists that hardly spoke any English. So she was really actually trying to help. And she was like so expressive as well. If I didn't know a word, she I don't think she had a phone, you know. She would kind of like act out certain things. So if she was explaining something and I would look at her a bit confused, she would kind of act it out, which I always found was quite an interesting way to learn, because now I still remember those words she taught me.
Yeah.
So yeah, improving my Spanish helped. I started learning a bit more Catalan, just because, of course, everyone speaks Spanish in Catalonia, but there are a lot of signs that are just written in Catalan. Or if you go to the supermarket, you'll be looking for leche, milk in Spanish, but instead of it saying leche, it will say let, and you're kind of thinking, what's let? Little things like that, you know. And then making friends as well from there instead of the Erasmus people really helped, because they started telling me things about the culture, little things about the language, teaching me inappropriate Spanish words. I got to listen to them when they were talking to their friends in Spanish and Catalan, or when they ordered. That showed me how I was kind of like a child, actually. I was just like watching them and then mimicking, and that really, really, really helped. So if you ever feel a bit isolated, you know, take a step back and think, right, how can I integrate myself a little bit more? Try integrating yourself, because that really helped. It really helped me, because you get to see another side of the country and the culture. You become part of it rather than just an observer. And yeah, I ended up loving Spain so much in the second semester, I didn't want to go home. You know, I ended up au pairing, living with some families. So I was well ingrained in the culture then, because I was part of the family. I was kind of like a big sister. I was an au pair, and looking after the kids and everything like that. So that was a lot of fun. And yeah, when it came time to finally go, I remember I was supposed to start uni on the Monday. I flew back on the Saturday. So I tried to time it like so close to coming, to when my course started back at York St. John. I had to come back in my third year. And I was crying on the plane, because during that summer I'd met my boyfriend. Of course, he wasn't my boyfriend then, but I'd met this guy that I really liked. And I felt, no, I'm not just leaving this whole dream life behind of going to the beach whenever I want and, sipping sangria with sand between my toes, that kind of thing. But I'd also left, someone that I really, really liked back there. So yeah, I felt like it really changed my life, and now I go back to Spain every few years. I go back every year because we go see my boyfriend's family. So it completely changed, from the first semester to the second.
So it's almost like a shift in mindset, isn't it? It's that kind of, I'm going to make an effort. And I think it's a common theme for people who go traveling. It's, we'd always say, well, learn a few phrases and try and talk to people. And I think the more they see you making an effort, the more effort that other people will make. And it's about finding, for travel, for a lot of people, it's about finding the real side of it. It's the hotels are all great and the 2-week holidays are great, but to really ingrain yourself and understand a little bit more about why do they do this? Why is it a touchy-feely culture? Why do they kiss each other? Why is it like this? And it's ultimately, you seem to have connected quite nicely with that. What have you integrated, or what have you brought back, apart from your boyfriend, but what have you brought back and integrated into your life in the UK?
It's so weird, because everything is so normal for me now that I forget what's more English and what's more Spanish. But I'm still on a Spanish like eating time. I kind of don't know how to explain it, but in Spain they have breakfast, of course. They have breakfast, and then they have their lunch, which is between like 1 and 3 p.m. Like, it's quite late compared to here in the UK. Here it would be 12 to 2 at the very latest if you're working in a horrible job where they won't let you have breaks, so you have to have it later. But yeah, let's say between like 12 and 1 is our normal lunch hour. But over there, it takes a little bit longer. That was something that was really new as well, was siesta period, everyone closing shop at 12 o'clock and then going home and then going back again to work at 5. That was odd, because I would want to go to the shop and nothing would be open in the afternoon.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, in terms of like bringing stuff back, as I said, breakfast, lunch, and then in the UK, you would have your dinner at like 6 p.m. 6 p.m. is like dinner time, tea time kind of thing, maybe 7 o'clock. But in Spain, that's their merienda time, like afternoon snack, right? So we, meaning me and my boyfriend, we have breakfast, lunch, merienda, and then we have our dinner, maybe. We're trying not to eat so late because we quarantine, we're putting on a bit of weight. So we're trying not to eat so late. But normally we would eat like sort of 9 o'clock at the weekend, maybe like 10 o'clock, something like that. I try not to eat too late, but I kind of forget as well. Sometimes when I go see my dad, or my dad's visiting, we'll get to around sort of tea time, like 6 o'clock. And I'll say to my dad, like, do you fancy a sandwich or some biscuits or something like that? And he's like, no, I'm really hungry. I want like a proper meal, Emma. Like, well, we're going to have that in a few hours. And my poor dad, he's not got used to the concept of merienda. But yeah, it's really normal. I kind of forget that it's not something in the UK as merienda, and me and my boyfriend will go out for meriendas, which would just be a pastry in a cafe, But yeah, that's something that's changed. I've never got rid of that, but I can't really think of anything else. Maybe, talking in a mix of English and Spanish with my boyfriend. We'll kind of mix sentences and stuff like that. Like, do you want to go for merienda instead of do you want to go for afternoon snack? So we kind of mix sentences, and if we want to talk about people, we'll switch to Spanish and start whispering so they can't hear us. But I can't think of anything else that's really changed. It's hard to say because so many things have become normal in my life now that I sometimes forget what's not typically English.
Yeah, what's English or what's typically Spanish, and of course. Of course, I think that's through the evolution and through you learning what you like and what you don't like, and travel certainly seems a bit of a catalyst for you finding out a little bit more about yourself and a bit more building a bit about your confidence and what you want to do in your life. So how do you feel that travel has transferred through into your work and to what you've started to do or what you're doing now as a career, or how did you make that step? How do you think travel influenced that?
No, a lot. Like I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, like literally sitting here doing this podcast. And if you told me, Emma, it's going to go on YouTube and, so many people are going to see it, I would have just laughed in your face 10 years ago. Like, there's no way I would be on YouTube. That's crazy. Doing podcasts, I can't speak, So yeah, like putting myself in such a difficult challenge. Let's call it challenging rather than difficult. Putting myself in such a challenging situation as going abroad, learning a new language, so surviving.
Out of your comfort zone.
Yes, completely. I honestly, I genuinely feel that if you can go to a country and, integrate and survive kind of the way I did, like you can achieve anything. That's one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do in your life is, moving abroad. It's really, really hard. And quite a few of my students, they've moved to the UK from much further away than Spain, like, South America, for example. I've got quite a few South American students. They moved from Brazil and stuff like that. And, they talk about how much of a shock it was for them. And I now have that empathy towards them. I know exactly what it's like moving abroad. I can give them some advice. Some of my students have felt quite lonely. So I've given them some tips. I've done a little bit of research into some Facebook groups maybe they could join for them to meet other people from their country. Because sometimes when you're abroad, you do feel a little bit like, I just want to see English people. I just want to speak English for half an hour and, relax my brain. And because it's tiring, speaking another language all the time. So, yeah, I didn't forget what the question was, because again, I went off on a tangent. But
That's perfectly fine, because it's about, you know, it's about you and who you are and how you've developed. And I can see that, you know, because obviously we're back when you were at York St John, we met back then, and we were, you know, we was doing the charity work then, and it's lovely to see that growth and where you are now, and how fantastically well your career has evolved and the direction you've gone in. How do you feel that, you know, what advice would you have for other people who are maybe where you were, you know, 8-10 years ago? What advice would you have to them, and what things, you know, sort of not top safety tips, but just things that they should be aware of or should look into a bit more and be prepared for?
Well, nowadays, you know, when it comes to like travel safety tips and so on, you have loads of information online compared to when I was looking before. You, of course, have YouTube, travel bloggers, vloggers, influencers that you can sometimes just message. Like a lot of influencers and stuff now, their DMs are open, and you can go and message them and ask them like, how was your experience in Spain, like, really? And ask them about it, because of course some people don't want to talk about the bad side of traveling to countries, because people may get them the wrong way and stuff like that. You know, and take it as like, well, why'd you come to my country if you hated it so much? But it's not always you know, about that. Do you know what I mean? It's like my story with Spain. You know, I didn't like it at first because it made me uncomfortable, but I didn't hate the country. I probably would have gone back, you know, but
I think very much it's about your experience. You know, it's to experience it yourself and to find out what you think, and not sort of influenced by what other people think. But, you know, as a charity and what we're promoting, I suppose it's, you know, we'd never say don't go anywhere. We'd just say make sure you're as prepared as you can be, and that's mentally, that's physically, that's emotionally. You know, it's what can you do to make sure that you have the best and the smoothest experience, and get the most out of the adventure. Because for a lot of people who travel, it's you know, their time is limited. It's, you know, I know you've got 12 months, and sometimes you can think, oh, 12 months, it's an eternity. But really, and it's over in a flash, literally over in a flash. So, you know, what do you think that people who are maybe a little bit nervous or a little bit timid, and they're umming and ahhing whether to take that plunge, what sort of advice would you give to those people?
So do your research, for one. And as you said, you know, don't let other people's negative experiences affect your decision. Just take it into consideration. It's like, for example, if you research about Barcelona, I love Barcelona. Like, I want to move to Barcelona. I love it so much. But if you look at travel vloggers and their videos, they will say, oh, it's pickpocket heaven. You know, you're going to get robbed and stuff like that. Just be a little bit more careful when you're out. You know, don't walk around with your DSLR and your iPad and your laptop. Like, just have a bit of common sense, stuff like that. So yeah, definitely do your research. Ask people who have been to that place what their experiences were. As I said, many influencers nowadays and stuff, they have their DMs open, or they reply to comments on YouTube videos, on their blog and stuff like that, because they like talking about travel. They travel because they love it. So if they get to talk about it, that's good for them. They like it. If anyone is thinking about traveling abroad and they haven't before, or they've only ever traveled with their families, you know, on family holidays and stuff, and they're wanting to go abroad, after you've done your research and you're still umming and ahhing and you're not sure, if you're looking for a sign, this is it. Like, just go. Because I'm going to get a little bit, I don't know, like sentimental here, but I always feel like we regret the things we never do, you know, than the things that we do. There are countries that I've been to that I really wasn't that impressed by. Yeah, they're nice countries, amazing food, amazing people, amazing architecture, great culture, but they didn't wow me or anything like that. But I'm glad I went. I would rather go and be a little bit disappointed but have that experience than never go and wonder, what would it have been like to go to that country?
Exactly.
Because you're young now. I mean, I don't know what what age people are who are listening, but you're young, and take that opportunity, because when you're old and frail, you won't be able to do it anymore. And who knows what the situation will be like then? Will we be able to travel as easily and stuff like that?
Of course.
So as I said, if you're looking for a sign to go and take that trip to Canada, to America, to Singapore, wherever you're thinking, just do it. Like, just go, because you will really, really, really regret it. Really regret it. There are trips that I've wanted to do and I've regretted not going, but then I've ended up doing it later, But you will regret it if you don't go. It's better to go, see what it's like, do your research before you go, have a bit of common sense about you, be careful when you're there. Go with a friend if you're really scared. Or take your boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever with you, if you can handle staying with them for so long. That's my message for those people, because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't travel. I wouldn't be running my own business. I would not have had the confidence to run my own business, start my own company, because I moved to Bristol thinking, I'm just going to get another job in a language school working as an English teacher, but there were no jobs when I moved here. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to start my own business. And I would never, ever, ever, 10 years ago, I would never have even thought of doing that. If you told me 10 years ago, Emma, you would be learning a new language every year. You'd be bilingual-ish in Spanish. You'd be running your own business. You'd be doing YouTube videos. You'd be, doing social media and stuff. I would have just laughed in your face, really. Like, it just wasn't me. But really pushing myself and going out of my comfort zone and surviving outside that comfort zone taught me that I can really, really, sounds cliche, but I can really achieve anything if I put my mind to it. It completely changed my mindset.
Yeah, I think that's a great message for people who are wanting to go travel. It's not just the experience itself, it's what it can add to your future life, your future career, for meeting potentially your future husband. All these things that travel seem to be, certainly for you and what we're talking about today, is that turning point where it's given you confidence, it's built you up into somebody new, it's developed you into somebody else that has that confidence and has that ability and has that belief in yourself. And I think that's a great message for anybody going traveling, that it's not just about the experience itself, it's how it can influence the rest of your life and the rest of your career. So it seems to me that your our message from the charity is to prepare people to go traveling and to go to different places and to be as safe as they can and as prepared as they can, and to make sure they have a fantastic adventure. But from what you've said, tell us a little bit more about what you now do as a business, because it seems to be you're helping people who are coming from other countries to the UK and helping them to integrate a little bit more and helping their skills. Tell us what you actually do for a living now.
I don't think I ever really kind of said what I did I? Sorry. So I'm an English teacher. English is a foreign language teacher. As I said, I studied linguistics. I then later did a master's in education in TESOL. So teaching English to speakers of other languages, if people aren't aware of that. But then again, if people are thinking of traveling, they've probably considered TESOL, or TEFL, or whatever they want to call it. I did my CELTA to qualify and help me become a teacher, which is, for people listening, a teacher training course. It's 4 weeks, super intensive. It's horrible. You will break down and cry, but it's probably the best and most useful course you'll ever do in your life. I kind of wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. I was quite happy teaching in Bristol. When I first moved here, I was quite happy doing that. I mean, before I moved to Bristol, I ended up finishing my degree. We moved down to a really small town in the south of England, near Brighton. And I just couldn't get a job anywhere. No one wanted lessons with me. There were pretty much hardly any potential students there, to be honest. So I felt really, really, really down. Like, I just finished uni. I couldn't get a job. And I'm sure many people feel like that when they finish uni. They can't get a job and they think, I failed. I'm meant to have a job now. I'm meant to be successful. That's what they told me would happen when I went to uni. But no, I finished uni, couldn't get a job anywhere. And I had to get a job as a carer in a nursing home. And yeah, that's really different, you could say. But yes, it was different, but I had to still be able to communicate. A lot of the patients there, or the residents, I should call them, they had dementia, or they were deaf, or they had some kind of communication issues. So that, even though like it wasn't intentional, that ended up teaching me to become a lot more patient, which you really need when you're teaching English. Communication skills, again, something I really need to do. You need to learn to express yourself in different ways, because sometimes people don't understand the first way that you that you explain yourself. So that taught me that, but I absolutely hated the job. The job itself was lovely. The manager was horrible, pure evil. Left after 3 months, got out the laptop and said, right, to my boyfriend, we're moving. We're leaving this town because I can't get a job anywhere and I don't want to go back to that care home. It was horrible. Typed in Google, top 10 best cities to live in the UK, and we ended up coming to Bristol. And yeah, I remember no one replied to me, like no schools replied to me. I couldn't get a job anywhere. And I was a little bit bored as well. Like I'd had that break from education, but I still wanted to learn. So I applied for a master's at Bristol Uni, started that. But again, like I couldn't find any jobs in schools, and I didn't want to go back to working in a supermarket because I really didn't like that the first time I did it. And yeah, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start my own business and see what happens. And I ended up just charging super cheap. I think I charged like £10 per hour, which for Bristol is really cheap. And I ended up kind of like undercutting my competition, which I don't know if is like the smartest business move, but it worked. It's got me to where I am now. But yeah, that also helped me build my confidence a little bit. But I would never have done that if I don't want to say like if I'd never gone abroad, but if I'd never learnt to step outside my comfort zone like I did in Spain, I would never have learnt to step outside my comfort zone when it came to starting my own business. But then I did it again later. I started my business. That was going great. But then I finished my degree, my master's, and I thought, I'm a bit bored now. What should I do? And I remember I was looking for some videos on YouTube for a student because, some of my students had problems with understanding accents across the UK. So I would say things like, there is a car, and they'd be like, there, car, what are you saying? So I would have to say things in a kind of American accent, like there is a car. And then they would say, like, I got it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, there is a car. And I thought, this isn't right. Like, I shouldn't have to change my accent to an American one for people to understand, because, Bristolians aren't going to do that. So, or anyone in England's not going to do that. So why should I as a teacher? That's a little bit weird, a little bit fake of me. So I was having a look for some British pronunciation materials, and I couldn't find any. I mean, there were some, but they weren't kind of what I was looking for my students. So there was this very clear gap in the YouTube market. And of course I had my linguistic degree. I knew a lot about phonetics and phonology, and I surprisingly really enjoyed that. I loved doing phonetic transcription. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try and start doing YouTube, but I was too scared. So I just started on Instagram, just making little videos and stuff. But again, I was too scared to put myself on the internet. So even though I'd gone through these two huge hurdles of living in another country and starting my business, I encountered this other hurdle. And, putting yourself on the internet's really scary. There's a lot of hateful people out there, and you don't want to read horrible messages about yourself, but you get used to it after a while if anyone's thinking of doing it. After the 100th hate message, they all blur into one after a while. It doesn't matter. But I just started doing little posts and then videos from time to time. And then a friend of mine who's also an English teacher based in Brazil. I think he's also from Brazil. He said to me, Emma, your profile's really good and there's a niche here. You know, there's a market for what you're doing, but you really, really, really need to be doing more videos because you're a pronunciation page and people need to see your face and your mouth. You know, they're not going to get pronunciation just from posts with text. I thought, oh, he's right. So I started doing little videos bit by bit, just kind of dipping my toes into that, and that was fine. And then many people were asking for longer videos and more detailed videos, and Instagram at the time of recording this only allowed you only allowed you to do 1 minute videos. I think you can only still do 1 minute videos. So I thought, oh God, I'm gonna have to do YouTube videos. And it took me a while to gather the courage to do that, but I did it. My first video went out, I think it was March 2018. So quite a while ago now, it feels, but I did that. People loved it. I then started making more and more and more. That increased my confidence. So I always find that it's like that building up to something that's the worst. You know, it was the same before I went to Spain. I was thinking about it too much, like, oh, maybe I don't want to go, it'll be too scary, I'd have to learn Spanish, I'm not going to understand anything. It's the building up part that's the scariest, but once you're there, it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. You know, now I make videos every week, it's like, oh, it's not that bad. So don't let the building up and overthinking take over. Because I think that's when people quit and they don't take that jump because they're thinking too much. But then once you do it, it's like, oh, it wasn't actually that bad.
Yeah, of course. No, well, I think it's exactly that. I think it's you've taken the leap once and you realise, well, I can take that leap in anything.
Yes,
and
that's
anything
it.
I do, and whether that be just personal or business or career or travel or anything, it's that confidence to just take that first step and that first step again. So absolutely fantastic, Emma. Thank you ever so much. I think it's been a very insightful podcast, and I think it's been great to hear your story and how you've evolved. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Is there anything you'd like to leave our viewers with today?
I'm going to repeat the message that I said before, that if you're looking for a sign to go and travel or start that business or whatever, this is your sign. This voice that you're listening to, this podcast. If you're thinking of going abroad, traveling, getting that job in Tokyo, you've been thinking of doing, taking that intensive Spanish course in Madrid, I don't know. Whatever you're thinking of doing, take this as your sign and go and do it. Because I also had that sign. Like, I haven't told many people that, but I think it probably was my dad that said to me, like, you know, you go and do it. You know, he was the one that kind of kicked me, you know, to go to Spain and do it. And without him, my life would be incredibly different. I wouldn't have the boyfriend I have now. I may still be single. I don't know. I would be in a very different job. I would be less patient, less understanding, less, empathetic. I wouldn't be teaching English. I wouldn't have this love for languages that I have now. I would probably have gone back to my small town in Yorkshire and stayed there, and my life would have been incredibly different. I'm not saying that my life is necessarily better than in the parallel life I could have had, but it's just very different. And your life could be really different too. Actually, it probably will if you travel.
Of course, yeah. Or more rewarding, or certainly more appreciation for certain things. And I think that's the key, is to appreciate where you are and what you've got and the opportunities that come your way.
Yeah, it's made me more open-minded as well. That's for sure. A lot more.
No, I think that's a huge point, and certainly for our listeners, I think that's great. Certainly a very, very positive message. Emma, thank you ever so much for talking to us today, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again and hear more of your wonderful stories and more of the little bits and bats that helped you to get to where you are today.
Yeah, I have plenty of them, trust me. See, this is why you need to travel, because then you'll have great stories to tell people. Yeah. I've not even mentioned, any of the stories from my travel, but yeah, you'll collect stories to tell your grandkids one day or tell your friends or whatever. And yeah, you don't want to be boring. You want to be like the cool grandma or granddad, don't you? Like, you want to share stories of how you backpacked around India and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Life is about experience, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Very, very true. But yeah, thank you for inviting me on, and I hope people do take that plunge if they're listening. Go do that thing you've been thinking of doing.
Definitely. No, very, very inspiring. Thank you ever so much, Emma. We shall speak to you again very, very soon.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Safer Travel Talk. To join us on this journey, make sure you follow the podcast on Spotify or subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. You can also follow us on social media and visit carolinesrainbowfoundation.org/podcasts for more information. Thanks to Richard Stuttle for hosting the podcast and Chris Healey for producing. As always, safe travels, and we'll see you in the next episode.